I see a lot of people coming up to me and saying, hey, I have only $30,000 or $40,000. What do I do? Because I don't want a big mortgage. I want something that I can manage. And that strategy works for you as well, because what you are doing is you're recouping that money back in 12 to 24 months time, and you're building up your deposit a lot faster through your savings and the money coming in, because the rent is irrelevant, right? Because you are either paying rent or mortgage. And so if they are the same amount, the money coming back from Airbnb is like almost a side hustle that you've created for yourself. Fast track your deposit creation for you to move into the rent vesting space properly. You're listening to Help Me Buy Property podcast, powered by Investor Partner Group. We help improve lifestyles by building scalable and sustainable generational wealth and passive income streams. We do this via our ecosystem that is a one-stop shop to all property investment needs. From evidence-based, data-driven buyers agency, industry-renowned portfolio reviews and property strategies, property development with and for clients, tax, SMSF, business structures advisory, and cash flow real estate. Everything we do is to help people achieve financial independence and not just basic financial freedom by using property as a tool and as a medium. Presently, we've launched Australian Property Academy, where we are training and teaching buyers agents, property advisors, property strategic partners, and secrets to finding investor-grade properties to astute investors. Connect now to experience it yourself, or drop in a line below at info@helpmebuy.com.au to get more information. Be kind and happy investing. Today, we are talking about an interesting topic of how to use government schemes to enter into the first home buyer space or first property space while actually reducing the rent. It's an interesting dilemma, and no one ever talked about it. So we are going to explore the strategy. And in order to discuss this strategy, I have my co-host, Miss Cheryl Leong. Cheryl, how are you today?
I am very, very good, Moss. And this is really, it's not an area that I know very well. So I'm going to be asking lots and lots of questions because, like I said, it'd be great for first home buyers because we're talking about, people who have saved lots of money as property is more expensive. They may not be able to afford, grand homes to begin with. So does this apply to every type of property, or are we talking about just some types of property?
We're talking about price points of around 500 to 550, typically that price point. It's not just first home buyers typically. It's also, I'll talk about, I'll share a story. I think that provides a good segue into this. I have a client who had a decent deposit, and so they can go out and buy an investment property. But their problem was that they are living in an apartment that was selling for like $475,000. They were paying a rent of roughly about $550 to $600 per week in rent there.
Yeah.
And so their problem was, I know this tenancy, the rents keep going up and, they'll kick us out. And so why don't we use the first home buyers scheme to buy this apartment? Now, everyone knows that apartments don't grow in value, right? So any money that you're going to put in the apartment is going to basically be locked in, and you're not going to see the ROI from these apartments. Now, you put in 20% deposit and you don't get the return. That's a really bad scenario. And so naturally, my default position was, well, that's really stupid. Like, why would you do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Naturally, that's how you would default to, right?
Yes.
And so that is the scenario, right? So, you're talking to people who are looking for, hey, I want to rent west, but I have a problem here with first home buyers. I haven't bought my first property. I like my location. I'm living in a city apartment or in a city apartment, like say, for example, Melbourne or Gold Coast or somewhere there. It's not a brand new apartment. It's an old apartment, but I'm renting here. I'm paying a lot of rent, $600, $650 in rent. And so how do I go around reducing my rent, affording this apartment, and still going out there and buying an investment property? And that is the problem that we're solving with.
Okay, so the scenario is you've got someone who, not necessarily a first home buyer, so someone just generally who is, say, renting, but wants to buy their first property. Are we talking about just their first property? Yeah, their first property, okay?
Yeah.
So you're renting in a place in an area that you like, but you're paying a lot of rent.
Yeah.
Then you want to be able to purchase property. And so I guess the dilemma is, purchase property is going, where can I afford to buy as well? May not be necessarily where I like to live, right?
Yeah.
So it's then going, well, I'm paying a lot of rent. Do I just buy this property and then move into this other one? There's a few dilemmas there. So, okay, so
Correct,
I just want to set the scene for the play.
And look, I mean, naturally, people would default to saying, well, rent waste, suck it up. If their rent is higher, move to a cheaper rental place. It does not really matter. But suck it up, go rent west because you're going to make the returns there, right?
Yeah.
The solution that we're going to talk about today, or the strategy that we're going to talk about today, is the best of both worlds. You'll still own an apartment and you can still go out and invest into an investment property. And you can do both at the same time by using the power of government grants.
Sorry. So, owning the apartment. So are we buying two properties? Are we buying?
Yes. Yeah, we're buying two properties. So so let's play this scenario out, right? From numbers perspective. So let's say, a person A has $120,000 in deposit. Yeah. And that is all they have. They have good servicing. So husband and wife are partners, they're living together. And so they can borrow up to $1 million, or $800,000. That's not an issue. Borrowing is not an issue, right? The place that they're living in, that is costing them $550,000 as an apartment. And so if they use that 120, all of that money basically goes there. Yeah?
Yeah.
At 20%. If they use the government scheme, they can use a 5% government scheme or a 2% government scheme if they're single, or the federal talking about 35% government scheme, where they can only pay 5% deposit and the rest of the deposit the government pays, and still save that deposit and use the deposit to go out and buy an investment property.
Oh, okay.
Makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, the question here becomes, which is quite relevant and important, is why would people choose that? Why would people go out there and buy an apartment? You know that apartment is not going to grow in value, right? But you're hitting like two birds with one stone. And so for people who don't understand the first home buyer scheme, it's important to articulate how it works. So in scenarios where you're paying 2%, 5%, government paying the deposit or balance of the deposit, government deposit schemes, what the government is doing is they're providing a bank guarantee to the bank saying, hey, this person only has 2% deposit or 5% deposit. We'll take them to 20% deposit by giving our guarantee, but we'll take a stake in the ownership of this property. And you need to only give them 80% of the loan. There is no LMI, and they are first-home buyers. And so, you will give them, say if it's a $500,000 loan, you'll give them $400,000 in loan, and they'll only give you 2% or 5% of $500,000, which is what? $25,000, right? Mm. They have $120,000. They've used $25K here, and they haven't paid any stamp duty, mind you, right? Yeah. Because, a lot of these in Victoria where you keep it below 600, you don't pay any stamp duty. Yeah. You are still left with $95,000 in your kitty for you to go out there and buy an investment property.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Now, the question again becomes why use $25,000? Because that's still money wasted, right? People would naturally default to that position that, oh, this is still money wasted. My question to them is this, right? When you are buying an apartment and you're taking a small stake, we all know that apartments don't grow in value. So giving someone a stake of zero, when you know that this is going to be a zero return investment in 2 or 5 years' time, does not really matter. Yeah? Mm-hmm. How are you going to recoup your money is very, very important, right? Yeah, how are you going to get that $25K back is very important. And so this is where the magic happens. So you're not getting a 95% loan or a 98% loan. You're only getting 80% loan, and that's what the bank is going to charge you interest on. In majority of these circumstances, when you calculate the repayments on an 80% loan on a $500,000 property, your repayments would be either at par or lower than the rent that you're paying in some of these locations, because these are prime city locations. That's number one. Number two, because you are in an Airbnb hot market and you stage your house really, really nicely, you get an opportunity to rent out these properties for 2 months or 3 months. This particular client that I'm talking about, he rents out his property from November, December, January, travels to Colombia. And for each night he rents out a property, he gets between like $150 to $220, depending on what night it is. And so you take into consideration those 3 months. In the first year, he's got all of his money back from Airbnb by renting out this property. Again, from a tax perspective, the question becomes, are you not exposing yourself to capital gains tax because now you've used your property for investment purposes?
Yes.
Yeah. But there is no capital gains tax because these properties don't grow in.
There's no capital gain. Ooh.
Yes.
And so what's the stamp duty position there?
Well, there is no stamp duty. So if you're below the threshold for your first property, be it in Adelaide,
Yes.
be it Melbourne, there is no stamp duty, right?
Right.
So you don't have that out of pocket. And then now you have that extra $95,000 there, and you can use LMI to your advantage and buy a proper investment property that can still generate return on investment for you while you recoup the cash flow from your own property, the apartment, on an annual basis for as long as you want. You don't have an owner kicking you out of the property. You don't have a strata complaining that, you are subletting the property for Airbnb. You basically take away all of that mess completely by owning that piece of real estate. Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book. It's easy to read. It has a lot of stories. It has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book.
I mean, but there's a purpose there because you're going, well, I'm going to be paying for rent anyhow. But I mean,
yes.
You're looking at this as sort of a means to an end in terms of then it's not wasted money, right? I mean, going to someone else, you might not get the capital gains in, you may or may not, whichever, but it's neither here nor there. If you have the luxury or the option to be able to Airbnb it a few months in a year, then we've got some.
Well, I mean, with this particular client, if I use them as an example, what they were planning to do was take it to the next step. And so they were planning to build up an Airbnb business. And so they were like, okay, how do we go around building an Airbnb business? And so they're like, okay, we need to own an apartment to basically test out an Airbnb, because Airbnbs do really well in central locations of the city, unless you buy them in the beachfront or something, and it's a much more expensive asset investment. In cities, Airbnb does amazingly well. And so they're like, okay, how do we go around doing that? And so this was the entry to the market. They're like, okay, we are going to live in a nice house, which is really well furnished. We're going to treat it as an Airbnb, and we are going to basically scale up, test this out. If this works, then this is the strategy we follow, right? We will go into a rental arbitrage mode, speak to all the owners in that apartment building and see how many we can secure from a rental arbitrage perspective, get them on the lease, and then rent them out.
Yeah, right. That's for another episode.
Yes.
Okay.
That's definitely for another episode.
Okay, awesome. So the scenario here is, like I mentioned, it's someone who wants to be able to rent best, but in this circumstance, we've been able to leverage the government scheme, sizable sort of deposit, but allowing yourself to purchase 2 properties, one which will be more sort of have more capital growth potential, the other not so much, but then you're not wasting your rental money, money on a rental. It's going into a property that ultimately you own, and you have an asset there to actually be able to leverage it for some income as well.
The interesting bit here also was that when we went to the bank, because
they doesn't look at the tax implications, they just want to know what
tax implications.
What money.
Yeah.
So is it too much to also ask then, are they buying these properties in personal names?
Well, I mean, the first property has to be in personal name because your own principal place of residence cannot be in a trust. And so it has to be in a personal name. The reason that this strategy works at a smaller price point and not a bigger price point is because then you're not locking your serviceability in at a much bigger price point at a much lower, but much higher LVR. And so you have an opportunity to make the cash flow, bring the ROI back. So the 25,000 that you've used in the deposit, you're actually getting that money back through Airbnb income, and getting that money back and using that income towards the servicing for the next property, and then basically growing it up from there.
And so because of the specific price point, does it mean that there are certain cities that are going to be better for this strategy than others?
Look, I know Melbourne definitely works at that price point. And what I have noticed that it's not the core city, it's always the fringes that works better. And you're not looking for a luxury 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom penthouse, right? You're looking for you're looking for an ugly duckling 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom where you might have to, paint it yourself and, do a bit of work to lift it up and make it feel a bit homely in order to get to that price point of, $550. This strategy would typically work everywhere where the rents are higher. And when you do the comparisons, the repayments are lower at 80%.
Yes.
Right? It would basically work everywhere. So while, we are focusing on a price point, it's almost irrelevant. If you find those pockets where, you're paying $1,500 in rent, but the mortgage repayment is only $1,000, then it would work there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So whoever's listening, you're a first home buyer and you've got at least about 120, maybe you've got, at least 100 grand of deposit, and you're going, how can I leverage? This is the episode for you to really drill down and just write your notes, right? And if you want to get some clarity, obviously hit Moss up on that.
And even if you have I see a lot of people coming up to me and saying, hey, I have only $30,000 or $40,000. What do I do? Because I don't want a big mortgage. I want something that I can manage. And that strategy works for you as well, because what you are doing is you're recouping that money back in 12 to 24 months time, and you're building up your deposit a lot faster through your savings and the money coming in, because the rent is irrelevant, right? Because you are either paying rent or mortgage. And so if they are the same amount, the money coming back from Airbnb is like almost a side hustle that you've created for yourself. Fast track your deposit creation for you to move into the rent vesting space properly. So
great stuff.
Very exciting strategy. Very thing. And
it's a great strategy.
Yes.
It's a great strategy, and you're where you're leveraging. All of a sudden, you can purchase 2 properties, live where you want to live. Because often people are renting where they want to live and paying a lot of rent. That's sort of the war cry at the moment. They too much rent.
Yes. And those are the golden words, right? Don't be scared of debt or leverage. It's all about, using that debt or leverage smartly and managing it in such a way that you can grow up and build up your property portfolio.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Good words, Cheryl.
Amazing. I think it's sit down, have a think, but go through this episode with your pen and paper, work out what we've sort of talked through and broken down, and just run some numbers for yourself as well, and look around and go to sort of say, hey, how can I make this happen? And if any struggles, obviously reach out to Moss and his team. Will be able to help you with that.
100%. It needs to work on paper before you try to do it in real. If it doesn't work on paper, it does not work in real life. Golden words, Cheryl, as usual. Thank you for listening to us today. Take care, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing. This is Moss and Cheryl checking out. Adios.
Thank you. Bye.